Kim Dae walked through the halls of Nexus Academy with his bag heavy on his shoulder. The floating corridors made his stomach feel strange, but he was getting used to it after 3 days. Everything here was so different from Earth. The walls glowed with soft blue light, and students from dozens of alien worlds moved past him without looking his way. He checked his schedule tablet again. Advanced Galactic Defense, Room 47 Alpha. This was the class he had been worried about since arriving. Back on Earth, his sister Hyojin had laughed when he told her about it. "You're going to learn to fight aliens?" she had said. "With what? Your old hunting rifle?" Now he wished she hadn't been joking. His bag felt heavier because of what was inside. Earth Command had told him to bring something that showed human weapons technology. They said it would help other species understand what humans could do. Kim Dae had his doubts. The classroom was huge, with a high ceiling that seemed to go up forever. Strange plants from different worlds grew in floating pots around the room. About 30 students sat in chairs that changed shape to fit their bodies. Kim Dae saw tall blue beings with 4 arms, short gray creatures with big eyes, and things that looked like walking crystals. At the front of the room stood Professor Velnath. He was a Krillian, which meant he looked like a large lizard that walked on 2 legs. His scales were dark green with gold patterns, and his eyes were bright yellow. Kim Dae had read that Krillians could live for hundreds of years. Professor Velnath looked very old and very wise. "Welcome to Advanced Galactic Defense," the professor said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "Today we will see what each of you brings from your home world. Weapons tell us much about a culture. They show how people think about fighting and protecting themselves." Kim Dae felt his hands get sweaty. Around him, other students were opening cases and bags. He saw amazing things come out. A hegemony student named Zix pulled out something that looked like a metal tube. But when he touched it, bright energy flowed along its surface. A student from the Vega system showed a weapon that floated in the air and moved when she thought at it. "Each weapon here represents thousands of years of development," Professor Velnath continued. "Your people have worked to make the perfect tool for combat. Show us what makes your species strong." Zix went first. His energy weapon made a humming sound as he held it up. "The plasma pulse rifle," he said with pride. "It can fire through any armor and never runs out of power. The energy comes from quantum space itself." Other students made impressed sounds. The Vega student was next. Her floating weapon spun in circles above her hand. "Neural command disruptor," she said. "It reads the enemy's brain and stops them before they can move." More impressed sounds, one by one. Students showed weapons that seemed impossible to Kim Dae. Guns that shot pure light, swords that could cut through mountains, shields that could stop explosions. Each one was more amazing than the last. Then Professor Velnath looked at Kim Dae. "Human student, your turn." Kim Dae felt every eye in the room turn to him. He slowly opened his bag and pulled out his weapon. It looked so simple compared to everything else. Just metal and wood with basic mechanical parts. No glowing energy, no floating pieces, no quantum anything. The room went quiet for a moment. Then someone started to laugh. "What is that?" Zix said, pointing at Kim Dae's rifle. "It looks like a museum piece. Is it broken?" asked another student. "Where are the power cells? Humans still use kinetic projectiles?" said a tall blue student. "How primitive." The laughter grew louder. Kim Dae felt his face get hot with shame. He wanted to put the rifle away and hide, but Professor Velnath was watching him carefully. "It's a hunting rifle," Kim Dae said quietly. "My grandfather made it. It uses gunpowder to fire metal bullets." This made the laughter even louder. "Gunpowder!" Zix shouted. "Do you also use fire sticks and stone knives? How did humans even get into this academy?" Another student asked. "They're still in the primitive age." Kim Dae looked down at his rifle. It had seemed so important when Commander Yule gave it to him on Earth. "This represents the best of human engineering," the commander had said. "Simple, reliable, effective." Now it just looked old and stupid. "Chemical explosions to throw metal pieces," said a crystal-like student. "How do they even hit anything? No targeting computers, no energy focusing, no quantum targeting. Their whole planet must be like a history museum," Zix said. "I bet they still use wheels to move around." Professor Velnath held up one clawed hand. The room got quiet. His yellow eyes were looking at Kim Dae's rifle very carefully. There was something in his expression that Kim Dae couldn't read. Not laughter like the students. Something else. Something that looked almost like worry. Interesting, the professor said slowly. Very interesting indeed. He walked closer to Kim Day. May I see it? Kim Day handed over the rifle. Professor Velnath held it like it might explode. He looked at every part of it, from the wooden stock to the metal barrel. His claws traced along the bolt-action mechanism. Fascinating, he said quietly. Then louder. We will test all weapons on the practice range. Everyone will demonstrate their weapons' capabilities. The students started talking excitedly about showing off their advanced technology. Kim Day just sat there feeling embarrassed. He thought about sending a message to Hyo Jin, but what would he say? That her joke about his old rifle was right? That humans really were primitive compared to the rest of the galaxy? But something bothered him about Professor Velnath's reaction. The old Krillian kept looking at the rifle like it was dangerous. Not broken or primitive, but dangerous. Kim Day had seen that look before back on Earth, when military instructors saw his shooting scores. Maybe there was more to this than the other students understood. Maybe his grandfather's simple rifle had secrets that even Kim Day didn't know about. He was about to find out. The practice range appeared around them like magic. One moment they were in a classroom, the next they stood in a huge space that seemed to go on forever. The floor was hard metal, and targets floated in the air at different distances. Some targets looked like enemy soldiers, others like vehicles or buildings. Holographic simulation, Professor Velnath explained to Kim Day. The targets are made of hard light. They can be destroyed by energy weapons, but physical objects pass right through them. He paused. Usually, Kim Day felt more worried. His bullets were definitely physical objects. How could he hit targets made of light? The other students were setting up their weapons. Zix's plasma rifle was making louder humming sounds now. The Vega student's neural disruptor was spinning faster above her hand. Everyone looked excited to show what their weapons could do. Kim Day's roommate Taiho appeared as a hologram next to him. Taiho was studying on Mars Colony, but the Academy let students connect from anywhere in the solar system. How's it going? Taiho asked quietly. Terrible, Kim Day whispered back. They all think humans are primitive, and now I have to shoot at targets made of light with metal bullets. Maybe the targets have physical parts too, Taiho suggested. The Academy wouldn't give you an impossible test. I hope you're right, Kim Day said. Professor Velnath called for attention. We will begin with student Zix. Show us what hegemony technology can do. Zix stepped forward with his plasma rifle. He aimed at a target that looked like an enemy soldier about 50 meters away. The rifle made a loud buzz and a bolt of bright blue energy shot out. It hit the target perfectly in the center, and the holographic soldier exploded into pieces. The students cheered. Zix smiled and aimed at another target, this one shaped like a small vehicle. Another buzz, another perfect hit. The target vehicle burst into flames and disappeared. Excellent, Professor Velnath said. Clean hits, good accuracy. Next student. One by one, the alien students demonstrated their weapons. The neural disruptor made targets freeze in place, then fall over. A crystal student sound weapon made targets shake apart. Another student had a gravity weapon that crushed targets into tiny balls. Each demonstration was perfect. The weapons never missed, never failed, and always destroyed their targets completely. The students were having fun, laughing and cheering for each other. Then it was Kim Day's turn. He walked to the firing line with his simple rifle. Behind him, he heard whispers and giggles. This should be funny, someone said. Watch the primitive human try to hit light with rocks. Kim Day looked at the targets. Up close, he could see they weren't just holograms. There was something solid inside each one, like a skeleton made of metal and plastic. Maybe his bullets could hit those parts. He loaded 5 rounds into his rifle. The bullets looked so small and simple compared to the energy bolts and exotic ammunition the other students used. Just brass cases filled with gunpowder with lead bullets on top. Whenever you're ready, Professor Velnath said. His voice sounded strange, like he was holding his breath. Kim Day raised his rifle and looked through the simple iron sights. No targeting computer, no energy focusing system, no quantum assistance. Just his eyes and his training. The first target was 50 meters away. Kim Day had been shooting at targets like this since he was 12 years old. He took a breath, let half of it out, and gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked with a sharp bang. The sound was so different from the humming and buzzing of the alien weapons. It was loud, violent, and immediate. The target exploded, not in the clean, controlled way the energy weapons destroyed things. This was messier, more violent, Pieces of the target's internal structure scattered everywhere. The holographic parts flickered and disappeared, but chunks of metal and plastic fell to the floor with loud clanks. The range went completely silent. Kim Day worked the bolt, ejecting the empty brass case. It fell to the floor with a small ring. He aimed at the second target 100 meters away. Crack. Another explosion of debris. The third target was behind a barrier designed to stop energy weapons. Kim Day could see the blue glow of a shield generator. The other students' weapons had to shut down shields before hitting their targets. Kim Day aimed and fired. His bullet went straight through the shield like it wasn't there and smashed into the target behind it. Now the students weren't laughing anymore. They were staring with wide eyes and open mouths. The fourth target was moving, zigzagging through the air like a flying enemy. This was the hardest shot. Kim Day tracked it with his rifle, leading the target like his grandfather had taught him when hunting birds. Crack. The moving target jerked to one side and crashed to the floor in pieces. For his last shot, Kim Day chose the most distant target he could see. It was so far away that it looked tiny through his iron sights. The other students had needed their advanced targeting systems to hit anything that far. Kim Day steadied his breathing, adjusted for the distance and the slight wind in the range, and fired. The distant target disappeared in a cloud of debris. Kim Day lowered his rifle and engaged the safety. 5 shots, 5 hits. The range floor was covered with pieces of destroyed targets and empty brass cases. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Then a student named Kara, an Andromedan with silver skin, whispered, "How did you do that?" "The shields," Zik said, his voice shaky. "Your projectile went right through the shields." "That's impossible. Shields stop everything." "Everything made of energy," Kim Day said quietly. "Not everything made of matter, but the targeting," another student said. "You don't have any computers helping you. How did you hit the moving target?" Kim Day shrugged. "Practice. My grandfather taught me to shoot when I was young. We hunted together every fall." Professor Velnath walked forward and picked up one of the brass cases from the floor. He examined it carefully, then looked at Kim Day with those bright yellow eyes. "Chemical propellant," he said slowly. "Kinetic projectiles. No energy signature." He turned to face the class. "This weapon cannot be detected by standard sensors. It produces no energy emissions. It bypasses all conventional defensive systems." The students looked at each other nervously. "But it's so primitive," Zix protested. "It's just metal and chemistry." "Sometimes," Professor Velnath said, still holding the brass case, "the oldest solutions are the most effective." He looked at Kim Day again. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather and my father taught me," Kim Day said. "Most humans learn when they're children. We use these weapons for hunting, sport, protection. They're very common on Earth." Professor Velnath was quiet for a moment. Then he asked a question that made Kim Day's blood run cold. "How common?" After class ended, Professor Velnath asked Kim Day to stay behind. The other students filed out slowly, still whispering about what they had seen. Some looked at Kim Day with new respect, others with something that looked like fear. Zik stopped at the door and turned back. "That was lucky shooting, human. But luck runs out." His voice tried to sound tough, but Kim Day could hear the worry in it. When they were alone, Professor Velnath sealed the classroom door. The walls shimmered and changed color, becoming solid metal instead of the usual glowing panels. "Privacy mode," the professor explained. "No one can hear us now." He walked over to Kim Day's rifle, which was still lying on the demonstration table. "May I examine this more carefully?" Kim Day nodded. He watched as the old Krillian picked up the rifle with surprising gentleness. Professor Velnath's claws traced along every part of it, from the trigger mechanism to the bolt action to the rifling inside the barrel. "Remarkable engineering," he said quietly. "Simple but perfect for its purpose." He looked up at Kim Day. "How long have humans been making weapons like this?" "Rifles like this? Maybe 200 years, Kim Day said. "But we've been using gunpowder weapons for much longer. Almost 1,000 years." Professor Velnath set the rifle down carefully like it was made of explosives. 1,000 years, he repeated. 1,000 years of perfecting kinetic projectile technology. Something in his voice made Kim Day nervous. "Professor, is something wrong? The other students think human weapons are primitive, but you seem worried." The old Krillian was quiet for a long time. His yellow eyes stared at the rifle, but Kim Dae had the feeling he was seeing something else. Something from long ago. Finally, Professor Velnath spoke. I have not always been a teacher, Kim Dae. Before I came to this academy, I served in the Galactic Defense Force for 200 years. I was an intelligence officer specializing in threat assessment and unconventional warfare. He walked to the window that showed the stars outside. In that time, I encountered many dangerous beings. Pirates, rebels, terrorists, but there was one group that frightened even experienced soldiers like myself. What group? Kim Dae asked. The Shadow Guild, Professor Velnath said. Assassins. The most feared killers in the galaxy. They could eliminate anyone, anywhere, no matter how well protected. Kim Dae waited for him to continue. They had a secret, the professor said. While the rest of the galaxy developed energy weapons, shields, and advanced defenses, the Shadow Guild used something different. Something that made them nearly unstoppable. Professor Velnath turned back to Kim Dae and his expression was grave. They used kinetic projectile weapons, just like yours. Kim Dae felt a chill run down his spine. But humans aren't assassins. We're not killers. I know that, Professor Velnath said quickly. That is what makes this so remarkable. And so terrifying. He walked back to the demonstration table and picked up one of Kim Dae's empty brass cases. Do you know why the Shadow Guild's weapons were so effective? Kim Dae shook his head. Energy weapons are powerful, but they have limitations. They require power sources that can be detected. They produce electromagnetic signatures that sensors can track. Most importantly, they can be stopped by energy shields, which every important person in the galaxy uses for protection. Professor Velnath held up the brass case. But this is invisible to most sensors. It produces no energy signature. It cannot be jammed or redirected, and it passes through energy shields like they don't exist. But shields stop everything, Kim Dae protested. The other students said so. They stop everything made of energy, Professor Velnath corrected. But a simple piece of metal moving fast enough? Nothing stops that except more metal. Kim Dae thought about what he had seen in class. His bullets had indeed gone right through the shields that stopped the other weapons. The Shadow Guild understood this. Professor Velnath continued. They carried weapons that looked primitive, but were actually the most advanced killing tools in the galaxy. Not because of complicated technology, but because of perfect simplicity. He set the brass case down and looked directly at Kim Dae. I spent decades hunting these assassins. I learned to recognize their weapons, their methods, their thinking. And today, watching you shoot, it was like seeing a Shadow Guild master at work. But I'm not an assassin, Kim Dae said again. I'm just a student. I learned to shoot for hunting and sport. I believe you, Professor Velnath said. But that makes this even more significant. The Shadow Guild had maybe a dozen members at any time. They were rare because kinetic weapons were supposed to be extinct technology. Most species abandoned them thousands of years ago when energy weapons were developed. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But humans never abandoned them. You perfected them. And if one human student can shoot like a master assassin, how many more humans can do the same? Kim Dae felt uncomfortable under the professor's stare. Most humans can shoot. It's not unusual on Earth. Millions of people own rifles like mine. Professor Velnath's eyes widened. Millions? Yes, maybe hundreds of millions. In some parts of Earth, almost every family has weapons like this. For hunting, for sport, for protection, it's very normal. The professor sat down heavily in a chair. Hundreds of millions, he whispered. An entire species armed with assassin weapons. But we're not assassins, Kim Dae insisted. Humans are peaceful. We want to join the galactic community, not fight it. I know, Professor Velnath said. That is why I asked you to stay. I needed to understand what I was seeing before I reported it to the Academy administration. Reported what? Professor Velnath stood up and walked to his desk. He pressed several buttons and a communication device appeared. That humanity has unknowingly developed the most feared weapons technology in the galaxy, and that they've done it so thoroughly that even their students carry tools that would make professional killers jealous. Kim Dae watched as the professor began typing a message. What are you going to tell them? The truth, Professor Velnath said. That human primitive technology represents a complete paradigm shift in galactic warfare. That your species has mastered something the rest of us forgot was possible. He paused in his typing and looked at Kim Dae again. I am also going to recommend that the Galactic Defense Council take a much closer look at Earth's military capabilities. If your hunting rifles can do this, What can your actual military weapons accomplish? Kim Day thought about the weapons he had seen in Earth's military museums. Rifles that could shoot accurately for over a mile, machine guns that could fire hundreds of rounds per minute, artillery that could destroy entire buildings with single shells. And that was just the basic infantry equipment. For the first time, he began to understand why Professor Velnath looked so worried. 3 days later, Kim Day was called to the Academy's main office. He had been expecting this since Professor Velnath sent his report. Word was spreading fast through the school about the human student and his strange weapon. The office was huge, with windows that showed the entire Kithara moon surface. Behind a desk that seemed to be made of floating crystal sat Elder Kryn, the Academy headmaster. Next to him stood a tall woman in a dark uniform that Kim Day didn't recognize. "Kim Day," Elder Kryn said in his deep voice. "Please sit down. We have some questions about your demonstration in Professor Velnath's class." Kim Day sat in a chair that adjusted itself to fit his human body. "Am I in trouble?" "Not trouble," the woman in the uniform said. "I am Commander Sill from Galactic Intelligence. We are simply trying to understand what we observed." She activated a holographic display that showed Kim Day's shooting demonstration from several angles. "These recordings show your projectile weapon penetrating advanced defensive systems that are designed to stop all known threats. We need to know how this is possible." Kim Day watched himself shooting on the display. It looked so normal to him, but he could see why it might seem strange to aliens. "It's just a rifle. Humans have been making them for hundreds of years." "That's what interests us," Commander Sill said. "Our intelligence files show that most species abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago. Energy weapons are more efficient, more powerful, and easier to use. Why did humans continue developing primitive projectile technology?" "I don't think we considered it primitive," Kim Day said. "It works well for what we need. Hunting animals, target shooting, protection, simple and reliable." Elder Kryn leaned forward. "But surely your military forces use more advanced weapons." Kim Day thought about how to answer. "Our military uses projectile weapons too. More advanced ones, but still based on the same principles. Rifles, machine guns, artillery cannons. They all fire metal projectiles using chemical propellants." Commander Sill and Elder Kryn exchanged glances. "Your entire military is based on kinetic weapons?" Commander Sill asked. "Mostly, yes. We have some energy weapons now, like lasers for certain applications. But the basic infantry weapon for every human soldier is a projectile rifle." Commander Sill made notes on her tablet. "How many soldiers does Earth have?" Kim Day wasn't sure he should answer that, but it wasn't really secret information. "Active military? Maybe 50 million across all the nations? But if you count reserves and militia, probably several 100 million people have military training with rifles like mine." "Several 100 million trained shooters," Elder Kryn said quietly, "all using weapons that bypass our defensive systems." At that moment, Kim Day received a priority message on his personal communicator. It was from Commander Yule back on Earth, and it was marked urgent. "May I?" Kim Day asked, showing his communicator. Elder Kryn nodded. Kim Day opened the message. Commander Yule's face appeared as a hologram, looking serious. "Kim Day, we've been contacted by several alien governments asking questions about human weapons technology. I need you to be very careful about what information you share. Some people are getting nervous about what they're hearing." The message continued. "I'm sending you some background information that might help explain things. Show them this data if they ask about our military capabilities. It's all public information anyway." A data file attached to the message. Kim Day looked at Elder Kryn and Commander Sill. "My military liaison on Earth sent some information. He says it's public data, if you want to see it." "Please," Commander Sill said. Kim Day opened the file and projected it as a hologram. Numbers and charts filled the air above the desk. Commander Sill began reading, and her expression grew more serious with each line. "These are production numbers," she said. "Earth manufactures over 10 billion rounds of ammunition per year." "That seems right," Kim Day said. "People use ammunition for hunting, sport shooting, military training. It adds up." 10 billion projectiles annually, Elder Kryn repeated. "And this chart shows weapon ownership?" Kim Day looked at the chart. "About 400 million civilian firearms on Earth, yes. Plus military weapons. Most are rifles and handguns similar to mine but with different capabilities." Commander Sill was reading more data. "Your military rifles have an effective range of over 800 meters? and some sniper rifles can engage targets at over 1,600 meters. The really good ones can shoot accurately much farther than that, Kim Day said. I've seen competitions where people hit targets at 2,000 meters. 2 kilometers, Elder Kryn said faintly. Accurate kinetic projectile fire at 2 kilometers. Commander Sill closed the data file and looked at Kim Day. These weapons you describe, they all function like yours? Chemical propellants firing metal projectiles. The basic principle is the same, yes. Though military weapons are usually more powerful than my hunting rifle. More powerful, Commander Sill repeated. She turned to Elder Kryn. We need to contact the Defense Council immediately. Elder Kryn nodded and activated his communication system. Priority channel to Galactic Defense Command. Classification level 7. A new hologram appeared showing an alien that looked like a giant insect in a military uniform. This is Admiral Vex. What is the emergency? Admiral, Elder Kryn said. We have new information about human military capabilities that requires immediate attention. Admiral Vex's compound eyes focused on Kim Day. The human student with the projectile weapon? Yes, sir, Commander Sill said. We've learned that his weapon is not unusual for his species. Humans have hundreds of millions of similar weapons, including military versions with greater range and power than anything we've seen from the Shadow Guild assassins. Admiral Vex was quiet for a moment. Are you telling me that an entire species has mastered assassin-grade weapons technology? More than mastered it, Elder Kryn said. They've made it their primary military doctrine. And they're applying to join the galactic community as a junior member species, Commander Sill added. Admiral Vex's expression changed. I'm calling an emergency session of the Defense Council. We need to completely reassess humanity's threat level. Kim Day felt confused and worried. Threat level? But humans want peace. We're trying to join the galactic community, not threaten it. I believe your intentions are peaceful, Admiral Vex said. But intentions can change. A species with your military capabilities cannot be treated as a junior member. You represent a potential threat that we never anticipated. The communication ended, leaving Kim Day alone with Elder Kryn and Commander Sill. What happens now? Kim Day asked. Now, Commander Sill said, we wait to see how the galaxy reacts to learning that humans are not the primitive species we thought you were. 2 weeks after the Emergency Defense Council meeting, Kim Day found himself standing in the Academy's largest auditorium. Representatives from dozens of alien governments sat in the audience, along with military officers, scientists, and diplomats from across the galaxy. At the center of the stage was a simple table with his grandfather's hunting rifle. Ambassador Park from Earth sat in the front row, looking as nervous as Kim Day felt. Next to her were several human military advisors who had arrived on the fastest ship Earth could send. Elder Kryn stood at the podium. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, he began, we are here today to discuss a remarkable discovery. What we initially believed to be primitive human technology has proven to be something entirely different. He gestured toward Kim Day. Student Kim Day will explain human weapons, philosophy, and demonstrate why the galaxy has fundamentally misunderstood Earth's military capabilities. Kim Day walked to the podium on shaking legs. He looked out at hundreds of alien faces, all watching him with intense curiosity. Some looked worried, others fascinated, a few seemed frightened. I'm not a military expert, Kim Day began. I'm just a student who likes to hunt with his grandfather's rifle. But I think I understand why everyone is confused. He picked up his rifle from the table. Other species see this as primitive because it's not complicated. No computer targeting, no energy systems, no exotic materials. Just metal, wood, and chemistry working together. A hegemony representative raised a tentacle, but surely more advanced technology is superior to such simple tools. Kim Day nodded to one of the human military advisors, Colonel Subin, who joined him on stage. She was carrying a modern military rifle that looked much more advanced than Kim Day's hunting weapon. This is a current human military rifle, Colonel Subin said. It can fire accurately at ranges over 1 kilometer, penetrate advanced armor, and operate in any environment. Like the student's rifle, it uses chemical propellants and metal projectiles. She activated a holographic display showing the rifle's capabilities. But the real advantage isn't in individual weapons. It's in our manufacturing and training philosophy. The display showed Earth's industrial capacity. Human weapons are designed to be mass-produced quickly and cheaply. We can manufacture millions of rifles and billions of rounds of ammunition in a very short time. A crystal-like being spoke up. But why mass production? Quality is better than quantity, Colonel Subin smiled. Because humans learned something long ago that the galaxy seems to have forgotten. Wars are not won by having the most advanced weapon. They are won by having enough weapons in the hands of trained soldiers. The display changed to show human military training. Every human soldier spends months learning to use kinetic weapons. Not just how to fire them, but how to maintain them. How to use them in different conditions, how to make ammunition in the field if necessary. Kim Day added. And it's not just soldiers. Millions of human civilians know how to shoot. We learn as children, the way other species might learn to use computers or flying vehicles. Admiral Vex spoke from the audience. You're describing a completely militarized society. No, Ambassador Park said, standing up. We're describing a society that never forgot that simple tools, properly used, can be incredibly effective. Professor Velnath joined them on stage. I have studied human history since our first contact, he said. What I found explains everything. A new display showed Earth's history. Humans developed kinetic weapons early and faced a unique challenge. Unlike most species, you had multiple intelligent groups competing for resources on the same planet. This created constant pressure to improve your weapons and tactics. The display showed human conflicts throughout history. While other species developed energy weapons after achieving planetary unity, humans were forced to perfect kinetic weapons through thousands of years of competition. You turned warfare into a science. A Vega representative asked, Are you saying humans are naturally aggressive? Not aggressive, Professor Velnath replied. Competitive, and incredibly good at learning from conflict. Kim Day stepped forward. I think the real misunderstanding is about what makes technology advanced. Everyone assumes that more complicated means better. But my grandfather taught me that the best tools are often the simplest ones. He held up his rifle. This weapon will work in any weather on any planet with minimum maintenance. It doesn't need power cells, computer systems, or exotic materials. A human soldier can carry enough ammunition to fight for days, and if they run out, they can make more from basic materials. Colonel Subin nodded. Human military doctrine is built around reliability and sustainability. Our weapons work when everything else fails. Admiral Vex stood up. Are you saying that human kinetic weapons are superior to galactic energy weapons? Not superior, Kim Day said. Just different. Energy weapons are amazing for what they do, but they can't do everything. He gestured to the display, which now showed comparative analysis. Energy weapons are powerful and precise, but they require infrastructure. Power sources, maintenance facilities, specialized ammunition. Kinetic weapons are simpler, but they work anywhere, anytime. A voice from the back called out, What about shields? Energy shields stop everything. Kim Day loaded a round into his rifle. With permission? Elder Kryn nodded. Kim Day aimed at a demonstration shield generator that had been set up on stage. The shield was glowing bright blue, showing it was active. He fired once and his bullet passed through the shield like it wasn't there, striking the target behind it. Energy shields stop energy, he said simply. They don't stop matter moving at high velocity. The auditorium was completely silent. Commander Sill stood up. The implications of this are staggering. Human weapons can bypass our primary defensive systems. But more importantly, humans have developed a completely different approach to warfare. She looked around the auditorium. We focus on advanced technology and individual superiority. Humans focus on reliable equipment and mass deployment. Both approaches work, but in different ways. Ambassador Park addressed the crowd. Earth doesn't want to threaten anyone. We want to join the galactic community and share what we've learned. Maybe our different approaches to technology can help each other. Elder Kryn returned to the podium. This discovery has changed how we view human applications for galactic membership. Earth cannot be considered a junior species with primitive technology. Your weapons capabilities alone place you among the galaxy's major powers. He paused. But more than that, you represent a different way of thinking about problems. While we pursued complexity, you perfected simplicity. While we focused on individual advancement, you developed mass capability. Kim Day felt overwhelmed by everything that had happened. A few weeks ago, he had been just a student worried about fitting in. Now he was representing his entire species in front of the galaxy. He thought about what his sister Hyo-Jin would say about all this. Probably something like, I told you that old rifle was special. Admiral Vex spoke again. The Defense Council will need time to process this information. Human membership in the galactic community will need to be reconsidered at a much higher level. As the session ended and beings began filing out, many stopped to look at Kim Dae's simple rifle on the table. It didn't look any different than it had a month ago. But now everyone understood what they were really seeing. Not a primitive tool, but the product of thousands of years of human engineering and philosophy. A weapon that represented humanity's unique approach to solving problems. Make it simple, make it reliable, and make sure everyone knows how to use it. Kim Dae picked up his rifle and checked the safety. Tomorrow he would go back to his regular classes, but he knew things would never be the same. The galaxy now understood that humans weren't primitive newcomers. They were something much more interesting, and much more dangerous than anyone had imagined. As he walked out of the auditorium, Kim Dae sent a message to his brother Junseo back on Earth. Remember that old hunting rifle Dad gave me? Apparently, the galaxy thinks it's a weapon of mass destruction. I'm starting to understand why they wanted humans in this academy so badly. The response came back quickly. Does this mean I can finally tell my friends that humans are space marines? Kim Dae smiled as he walked back to his dorm room. Maybe Junseo wasn't far from the truth.